Silent Spring, Chapter 6, Earth's Green Mantle, by Haley Walbacher, Evan Brown, Devin Walter, and myself, Eddie Heinen. The question for this chapter was, how does the use of herbicides impact the environment, and what role do insects play in this process? The claim was that Carson illustrates that trying to control the plants in our environment with these chemicals has a negative impact on the health of the environment overall, and that insects are safer alternatives to plant control. Carson begins this chapter with a description of the web of life. She emphasizes that everything in the environment is connected to each other. Plants are connected to animals and vice versa, with these relationships becoming increasingly more complex. The balance of the natural environment is well developed and has been created through a long process of trial and error. The organisms that exist in an area are near perfectly suited to be there. On the other hand, Carson also shows how easily these balances can be disturbed. When humans influence the environment, we can disrupt the balance in various ways. For example, when we add chemicals to one part of the environment, we have a negative impact on both the plants and animals near the site of contamination. When one part of the environment is knocked out of balance, the effects trigger a chain reaction throughout the web of life. By including such detailed descriptions of the relationships in the natural environment, Carson establishes the overarching topic of this chapter, the fact that using chemicals for attempts of controlling the environment has far-reaching negative effects. In addition, she examines the importance of human interference, taking a step back to see clear examples of how our actions need to be fixed. As a result, Carson builds a foundation for the rest of her chapter to refer back to when talking about herbicides and how they not only impact plants, but also the environment around the plants. Carson's first example of herbicides causing a major disruption in the balance of nature is with sagebrush in the western United States. The sagebrush was developed over long periods of time and became perfectly suited for its environment. Similarly, the animals evolved as well and came to use the sagebrush as a source of food. Both the sagebrush and the animals were perfectly balanced and their needs were met. This went on until humans interfered and disrupted the balance. Cattlemen in the area wanted more land for their animals to graze, meaning that the sagebrush would have to be removed. Government agencies became involved and decided that the best method of removal would be to spray chemicals to kill off the sagebrush. As a result, the animals lost an important part of their habitat, and a main source of nutritious food was removed from their diets. The sagebrush example allows Carson to show the terrible effects herbicides have on not only plants but also the environment around them. The application of these chemicals to the plants interfere with the balance of nature tremendously. The plants suffered as a result of the chemicals, but the animals that relied on them suffered as well. As a result, Carson is able to show the importance of not disturbing the balance of the natural environment with chemicals because it already has a well-developed organization.
Other lands that are being sprayed and affected. Areas larger than New England, which is 50 million acres, are constantly bombarded with weed killers and pesticides. More than 75 million acres within the Southwest alone are constantly sprayed. Woodlands from where our timber imports are relentlessly sprayed with chemicals from planes. This is done to, quote, weed out the hardwoods from the more spray-resistant conifers. More day-to-day examples would consist of a lawn in a town, a city park, or even at your favorite golf course. The slogan, cheaper than mowing, was used very often at the beginning of the marketing of these dangerous products. Nobody seemed to worry, though. These products were proposed to make life easier, to rid the roadside of brush and the backyard of weeds. These chemicals are so popular because they give the sense of power over nature. They omit the feeling that man can now alter the rules of nature, and people loved it. Although some people raised the question of what may come of it, these worries were pushed aside by smooth-talking salesmen. The convenience of being able to spray your lawn and have the stubborn weeds disappear outweighed the fear of how it could be damaging the soil. In 1960, conservationists went to Maine for a presentation to the National Audubon Society. Although an important topic and discussion was the reason of the presentation, the guests could not get over the view they had seen on their trip to Maine. The once lush green roadside filled with beautiful flowers and huckleberry was now brown and dead. The first recognition of how the brush control was affecting everyone and everything it touched. This was then called the roadside crisis. Maine is just one example. In Connecticut, the elimination of shrubs and wildflowers was at a scary high rate, claimed botanists. In Massachusetts, the spraying alongside roads contained the poison arsenic, which not only killed plants but also killed a large percentage of cows which lived on the roadside and ate those plants. As more spraying happened, more plants became affected, which ultimately throws a wrench in the natural balance of life. As chemicals were used in Maine, the lush forests within it began to die. Maine relies heavily on its income of tourism, which is mostly a place to travel because of the beautiful scenery. With the brush control, using chemicals and killing plants such as the fern, flowers, and huckleberry alongside the roads and within the forests, Maine may take a huge financial hit due to losing tourism. The convenience is not worth the risk. In Massachusetts, with the cows being killed because of the poisonous chemicals used on the plants, this only furthers to show the point that it is not worth it. In nature itself, if we keep interfering, killing plants and bugs, the natural balance that nature had created over lifetimes will be destroyed, bringing us overflow in other populations or resistance to chemicals within the very bugs that we had been targeting.
One method of plant control that is more effective than the herbicides commonly used is selective spraying. This technique was developed by Dr. Frank Egler of the American Museum of Natural History, and it uses the shrub's resistance to tree invasion to reduce the tall, woody plants that obstruct the roadways and drivers' vision. Carson argues that selective spraying is more effective than the blanket methods that are widely used because of the way it is applied. When selective spraying occurs, sprayers only spray the bases of trees. They use small, handheld sprayers that can be used to target specific areas. The environment is able to be preserved as other plants and animals are not impacted as they would be in blanket spraying. Also, selective spraying has been shown to be effective because after stabilization, areas often do not need spraying for the next 20 years. The chemical 2,4-D has been found to cause neuritis and paralysis in those who have sprayed it, disturb cellular respiration, and damage chromosomes by imitating X-rays. Also, many plants sprayed with 2,4-D have been found to contain nitrates. When nitrates enter the bodies of many animals, their stomachs transform the nitrates into nitrites. The nitrites cause the blood pigment to form a thick substance that holds in oxygen. Oxygen cannot escape, so the lungs and tissues become deprived and the organism quickly dies. These effects are very harmful due to the fact that animals seem to become more attracted to plants once they have been sprayed. The sprays change the metabolism of the plants and temporarily increase the sugar content of the plant, making it more attractive. Examples of this have been seen when lambs have eaten sprayed thistles and when cattle have eaten sprayed wild cherries. When animals eat these plants, they ingest the insecticides on them and are subjected to any number of the health issues listed on the previous slide.
Less harmful and ecological methods have been developed, so it may turn out that more can be created for areas like farms, forests, and ranges. One example are the klamath weed and the goatweed in California. Unlike sagebrush, there is no place in the ecology of the region. It was toxic to cattle grazing on it, and no one wanted it there in the first place. In 1925, 20 species of new cacti introduced in a garden in Australia could be found growing wild. There were no natural controls able to be used so it spread rapidly to cover 60 million acres. Carson stresses the importance of finding ways that are less harmful to the environment that also will be able to kill pests without affecting the ecosystem or using chemicals that are dangerous to humans and other organisms that live in the area.